And welcome to the Exit Teams podcast, where business owners and their advisors get real-world insight on how to build a team of advisors, maximize value, and exit on their own terms. I'm your host, Bob Tankesley, author of Exit Teams. Build a team of advisors for your business sale to get a higher price. You can find that book on Amazon. Just start typing in Exit Teams and it should be the first hit. And don't forget to check out our expanding content at exitteams.com. Whether you're years away from selling or thinking about an exit now, this episode is packed with must-know tips to help you avoid costly mistakes. Let's dive in. Today, I'm joined by a true expert in the world of exit planning and founder-led business exits, my good friend, David Shavzin. As the founder and president of the Value Track, David works with entrepreneurs long before they go to market, helping them build companies that buyers compete for, not companies that just get listed. David is thinking 3 moves ahead, and I've personally seen him do that over the years. He's an exit strategist extraordinaire and an M&A advisor who works closely with founder-led businesses. For over 20 years, he has specialized in helping owners who've spent years, sometimes decades, building something meaningful. He helps them think through what a smart, thoughtful transition really looks like. What I appreciate about David's approach is that he doesn't just focus on the price tag. He works with families on protecting legacy, preserving culture, minimizing risk, and structuring a deal that supports both financial security and long-term family goals. For owners who see their company as more than just an asset, who see it as a part of their life's work, David helps make sure that their transition is designed intentionally and on their terms. David, welcome to the show. This should be a valuable conversation for anyone thinking about succession, selling, or just building with the end in mind.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate you having me. Looking forward to what's always a fun conversation around these topics.
Yeah. You and I go back, what? Here it is, the first part of 2026,
Mhm.
2012, 2011, something like that.
It's got to be something like that.
Maybe at least 15 years.
I haven't aged since then. I don't know about you.
No, none of us have. None of us
Yeah.
have. We're hanging in there. Hey, let's start off talking about what you're really good at, value creation versus sellability. Because I've noticed many owners think that just a strong EBITDA or a top line is all they need. And for those who don't have a dictionary handy, EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Call it a rough approximation of cash flow, but it's a very often quoted metric in the M&A space. So let's back up. For owners who think that a strong EBITDA or gross revenue is all they need to get ready for sale, what are the hidden value drivers you've noticed over the years that you see buyers actually rewarding that owners often miss?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. Folks have been running their businesses for a long time. They've not been selling at all, and so they kind of miss that. The normal thing is to think about revenue, EBITDA, and so on. There's so many things, but I can share a few thoughts. Specifically, one we don't think about much at all is a strong team, for example. Especially these days in the last several years since COVID, finding good people is tough, just in
Yep.
general. But buyers are going to they're looking to buy this company, take on everything, including the people and the staff, and it's going to be a real issue. So when we talk about a good team, it's a team understanding and aligning with the strategy of the business. But often what we see too is a missing next level of management. So it might be the owner. They've got a few people who are kind of strong, but really not a solid team sitting there below that owner on the
It's like
people side.
the business is only one tier deep on
Yeah.
who's going to be left behind.
Yeah, the owner doing too much and not really strong second level leadership. The other one that we talk about a lot is business processes, right? So if you're not sleeping now, you'll fall asleep. But when we talk about business process, it just means clarity around how everything is done. It means everybody knows their job, their role day to day. If somebody's out, somebody can fill in, and you're working to make things more efficient and effective in any kind of business, any industry, in particular manufacturing. But if the owner walks, or the buyer, I should say, walks in the door and just people are kind of just doing stuff, they'll tell. They can see that right away. And the last thing I will, and I'll come back to revenue, right? So revenue is important, but I look at it more as strategic revenue. And by that, thinking things like how diversified is that among, it could be among customers, customer types, geographies, all kinds of things along those paths, but also looking at not just that total revenue, but breaking it down, which products or services are actually profitable,
Sure.
which aren't, so the ones that are not, you may want to either figure out how to make them profitable or to just jettison them, even if you
Well, wait
love
a
them.
minute. We're making sales off this
Yeah.
product. What you're telling me margin is important?
Yeah, yeah, funny little thing. Overall margin, but also again by product, right? Because
Yeah.
that if you just look at revenue, it hides everything, and it's a very kind of classic thing. Even goes so far as to say the same analysis with customers. If your customer is not, producing the margins, right? You got all these customers, maybe they're legacy customers, pricing hasn't kept up, whatever it is, when you
All
really
right.
analyze what they're costing you. So while we say, revenue is not everything, dissecting it and strategically looking at it is definitely a key thing that people generally don't look at, right? Is my revenue keeps going up. We like that, but a buyer's going to walk in and really dissect that, yeah, to see what's going on there. Um,
This is making me think of responses that I often get when I ask owners what they think their company is worth. If they're not educated about EBITDA or how buyers think, they might quote me things like, "Oh, it's worth I think three times my gross revenue," or yeah, five times. Or it's worth what my buddy sold his company for, or
yeah,
I have to remind them that's actually not relevant. Yeah, but he's in a similar industry. Okay, that's still not relevant. As far as the gross revenue conversation goes, I've come up with this phrase where I tell them it's not what you make, it's what you take that tends to drive value for most companies. If you think of gross revenue as what you make and EBITDA down below at the
yeah,
bottom as what you take, then that's what buyers are truly thinking about.
yeah. There's so much in between revenue and EBITDA
Yep.
to make this thing more valuable for sure. Yeah.
So not every company is sellable. Shocker. I think you and I are acquainted with these stats. Only about 20% of companies are ever taken to market, and only about 25% estimates vary, maybe 30% in a good year of those actually transact. So you end up with 4 to 5, maybe 6% in any given year of the total number of companies that are going to sell. And if you're a business owner listening, you might want to hit pause right now and listen, rehear that, rewind and hear that again. 4, 5, 6% of companies ever sell. So, David, in your experience, there's got to be some glaring big indicators that a business is not truly sellable. It's going to fall into, that unfortunately that 96% that never sell. I get re-shocked every time I say that.
Yeah.
Even if the owner thinks the company is going to sell, what do you find are those big problems that buyers are going to find? And if we just had, the right set of eyes and the right team looking at it, we could get ahead of this stuff.
Yeah. And the way I think about it and talk about it is, um, their thing again comes back to revenue. Oh, revenue's great. It's been increasing. We have a good looking P&L. To me, it's kind of like, the car that you see that's perfect on the outside, the paint is perfect, it's all shiny and clean and so on. But under the hood, there are issues. So you could have a wonderful P&L, but there's a lot of these other things happening. Everything from, and this I can't stress enough, the first thing we look at when we go into the company pretty much is the financial statements. So if the bookkeeping and accounting is a mess, it's incomprehensible, it doesn't make sense, especially year to year, huge red flag, and people don't focus early enough on that. But
100%.
other ones, yeah, just a handful that come to mind. Decreasing revenue, can be an obvious indicator. Looking at EBITDA and profitability, where it's either choppy year to year or declining. Um, and then, one of the hidden, not so hidden things really to the owner, they may have a whole lot of debt. sitting on the balance sheet. They owe so much money. And so on the surface, it might be worth X times the EBITDA. But once they really net it out in their financial situation, it's just not going to happen, or they're going to be dramatically disappointed on the price. Um, Related back to a comment earlier around people, but high employee turnover, right? They may think everything's fine because if they do lose somebody, they can replace them, perhaps. But that's something a buyer's going to look at. Why is that turnover happening? Customer turnover, right? Again, let's say revenue's even constant or growing, but if it's through churning of customers, there's deep-seated problems there. Another one is marketing and sales, in that if there's not really what I call a marketing machine happening, and if it's all the owner or one person doing the sales and business development, nothing sort of coming at them when they're sleeping. So those are, a handful. They're big ones. But uh, we've seen issues around legal complications. Let's call it that. So again, P&L is good. Everything's happening. Maybe they're not compliant with the million agencies of the federal or state government. It may be that they're in the middle of a lawsuit with people. There's so many things like that, to where it's a very comprehensive look at the business that we do and we have to do, on their behalf, and then try to solve those issues to make it sellable. So, I'll wrap it up there. That's when we talk about sellability. I used to talk about just value. We go in, build value. But now it always has been, but I really point out that issue. Can they sell it? You and I,
Yes.
you and I were in front of a case a while back where there were no written contracts for virtually all the vendors into this company that made up essentially 100% of the revenue.
And that was the
And
company that positioned itself as itself an aggregator of IP and branding of its own. And guess what? The IP owned by others wasn't buttoned up.
yeah, I mean, and that set them back a lot of money, attorney fees, and just time. So
Yeah.
any of these big issues can at best delay, if not completely derail. Yeah.
I think that's an awesome list. One of those that stood out was a balance sheet loaded up with debt. Now I've heard both sides of that. I've heard keep debt very low, and I've heard, hey, no debt is bad debt if it's used for a good purpose or something like that. But let's crawl inside the mind of a buyer for just a minute. I've heard buyers put it this way, and that is, wait a minute, if there's that much debt on the balance sheet, you mean I've got to once the seller pays off that debt at closing, you mean I'm going to have to come to the table with that much debt or more, or that much of my own money or more to duplicate the same cash flow profile that this business is supposed to be generating? I'm not too keen on that. I've actually had buyer pushback. So I think I think a strong case could be made. Go to market with a tapered off and reduced amount of debt over time that proves to that future owner that you can run this company without having to lever up so much.
Yeah, demonstrating that progress on the debt reduction. The other thing, and this kind of gets off into deal structure, right? I always say, especially when someone hasn't gone through it before, what they imagine is they show up to closing, they hand over the keys to the whole thing, they get a check for the whole thing, and they're done. And there's all kinds of issues underlying that. But in the case of debt, working on something now where is a fair amount of debt, and so we're kind of veering off a little bit to where the in this case the owner has time to put in. It could be 2, 3, 4 years, and is flexible. And so we're looking at creative options. One of which is some semblance of a merger
Okay.
over time, right? So each company is valued at whatever it is and however it's done. As it comes together, the debt may just stay back with the seller, maybe not, but the seller owner eventually will get out and earn money in a lot of different ways over a few years, and it may be payout over time, even beyond the years that they're there. So that is a huge issue with the debt.
Hmm.
It's not doable to get out. It just takes time, creativity, patience, understanding of it and just finding the right, I'll say, buyer partner out there to make
Yeah.
it happen. In this case, somebody in the industry who would love to take on that extra revenue. And if they're of the right mindset, we'll make a deal happen that way. But yeah, the debt piles on, one of those, when you get into that rut, you've seen it. They get an offer in the mail, or hey, do you want to borrow this money for 37%? And they're desperate in the moment, and they take it, and you start stacking up all kinds of different debt line items at silly interest rates, and it just kind of
Yep. Credit cards get
swirls down.
maxed. Bank
Yeah,
loans start stacking up in number and amount.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Still kind of focused here on the value creation versus sellability topic. From your experience, where do you see owners wasting the most effort? Like they're chasing activity instead of increasing transferable value.
Yeah,
So
that's a really good.
I'm amazed I see it each time, but it's out there.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a great question. One of those things just comes back to sales. Sales at any cost, any kind of sale, any product or service to absolutely anybody. So part of that comes back. The problem is you're wasting time, but you're bringing clients on where the profitability may not be there. So you've got wasted time and any expense to do that, and that takes away from the things strategically that you could or should be doing. The other one is hiring. It's like, let's look internally first. Are we doing things right? Do we have the right strategy? Are things running efficiently? Are people trained? Right? That probably could solve and grow quite a bit in the right way, as opposed to hiring a $150,000 salesperson thinking that that's going to solve it all over time. So it's really looking at, okay, it's a little bit of strategy and dissecting what's happening and what can we do before spending money. And that goes, even in a manufacturing environment. Let's get another machine. Well, are we running this one most effectively?
Sure.
Right? Do we add a second shift, whatever it is? So I would say definitely just examining everything before you start going out to hire or just get more sales for sales sake, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's
Switching to the realities of business valuation. You look at company valuations, as do I. What are you seeing like are the most common misconceptions that owners have about what their business is worth? And I don't even know what I mean when I'm asking that, because every owner I talk to has got a dead set number that just turns out to be what I valued the company for.
yeah, exactly. How many hours do you have on this one?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I kind of characterize it this way. Maybe half the folks I talk to have some idea, and usually it's pretty high. Some don't, which is refreshing, and have an open mind about it. But often it's too much, like you say, maybe their buddy sold it, their company has nothing to do with theirs for some amount, or somebody just put some multiple in their head, just said, oh, well, your industry, it's, 3 times EBITDA, something like that. So there's just no reality there from that perspective. The other one is, and it makes sense, right? They put in 25, 30 years, blood, sweat, and tears. It's been their whole life for 30 years. It's got to be worth something. That's sort of the thought
Yep.
process when they don't understand, that transferable value what buyers are looking at. Um, and then there's the equating a little bit like that. Equating the years means it's valuable. I put in all this time. It's been here for 30 years. Um, I think they're thinking a little bit about intangible value, brand awareness, all that,
Mm.
all these very kind of esoteric things. Um, and then sometimes, they may have a number in mind that they feel they need. So it's simply from that, and it's really not tied to the value of the business itself. It's say, hey, I want this much, right? So
Yeah,
it's
I don't
sometimes,
find too many buyers interested in what the seller says they need.
yeah. And I've said this, and it's we laugh sometimes, but I mean they just haven't been through it and don't understand. But I've had more than one say, well, all the blood, sweat, and tears isn't that worth something? And that's really actually a great segue to get with them and to help them understand the P&L, the balance sheet, because there are no blood, sweat, and tears on the balance
So
sheet.
there's got to be some you have to know going in. I'm more than likely going to have some work to do on shifting their internal value perception, call it,
Yeah.
to what a buyer is actually going to pay? What does that tend to look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of education up front. So right off the bat, I mean, okay, this is what buyers look for and why, and you cannot like that, but that is what it is. Um, and every situation is different. At that point, how much time do they really have? Do they have to get out? Or do they want to get out, or can they take a couple of years and work on some of these principles that we're talking about? So it really depends on where they're at. One of the nice things sometimes is when we actually get a realistic value and we make them talk with their financial advisor and understand
Yes.
what they really need,
Yep.
sometimes, it is more valuable than what they need. They may have wanted a lot more. They may have thought it was 25 million and it's only 8 million, but 8 million should be plenty for them, with what they want
Hmm.
to do for the rest of their lives.
After
So,
the planner does their thing and models out how long that'll last and withdrawal
yeah.
rates and all that.
Yeah, so getting real data on the table, first it's kind of sharing the construct of what buyers look for and why, and then looking at their own data, and then it's a discussion after that. Once they get all of that, it becomes a little bit easier. They can be disappointed, of course, but
Yeah.
um, it's
I
is
know it
what it
can
is.
I know it can vary by industry or type of company, business model type of company, but have there been like the most overlooked factors that tend to show up over and over again and again that can really move the needle on valuation if I imagine you're going to say if we have enough time and we get to the
Yeah.
owner early enough.
Yes, there you go. Next question.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, it really is all over the board. It's interesting. The what I always when I start out, right, kind of sharing what this is all about and how the math works, I just go, I start really simple. Imagine that you eliminate $100,000 of recurring expenses, permanently, right? Or you've got 100,000 more profitable, profits from revenue, whatever it might be. Well, that goes right to the bottom line and times three or four multiples. So you're building the value there, right? Three or four times. And that starts to get them to think, the right way and then make decisions the right way. But the other thing is, uh, I would say what offsets maybe some of the disappointment is in part explaining to them that there's all kinds of buyers out there, right? You've got all kinds of buyer profiles. And if we give all the company information to 10 different potential buyers, I'm still amazed. It's so funny and
How
fun to
wide the
look at.
range is. Yeah.
Broad range of the offer, and then that moves into again try explaining everybody's looking at it differently. Everybody's in a different situation, and therefore really spending time thinking about, all right, who is the best buyer profile for that specific company
Which
and
may
owner?
not be the highest price out of the pool.
Yeah, yeah. And there could be so many factors. I've had clients, meet a potential buyer and they're like, "There's no way I'm working with that person, right? Just personality fit, even if they might have been the highest bidder." So it's yeah, that it kind of touched on the story I was telling, a few minutes ago, where on the surface, this current client has a lot of that debt and everything, and so you start looking at alternatives that not just may maximize the eventual price, but actually allow it to be sold. Looking at these different structures. So you take, if they've got a preconceived notion of value, we can ask, kind of see where it came from, then educate them a little bit on how buyers do look at things, get them to look at their personal needs. So it's a process then of getting them back to, okay, here's where we really are.
Hmm.
And if you still don't want to sell, now they know better about how to take a year or two and make it more valuable if they don't want to get out right away. Yeah.
All right. So the owner hears valuation. They might be disappointed. They still want to move forward. So now we're into preparing for the sale. They've committed to it. Okay, we're going forward. Don't know what it's going to look like. I'm going to need some help. Hopefully they say that. So now you're getting them ready for the sale, and you talk about the importance of sale readiness. I like that. What are the top three deal breakers? We're big on top threes here. The top three deal breakers that you find once we're in due diligence. Like the buyer has raised their hand. We've signed an LOI that gives them some period of exclusivity. Now they're starting to peel those layers back on that onion, and they're getting to see a lot more than just what the marketing piece says that they first got a hold of. They were down in due diligence, and they get to this, and it's a hard stop on these areas. Where do you see that?
Another 8 hours, but I'll reduce it down. Yeah, no, there's a lot of things I would say, some that come up even ahead of due diligence, right? And or they may be aware of things ahead of due diligence. They haven't focused, enough, and then it maybe come after a letter of intent and during due diligence, that kind of thing. Some of it's buried, some not. But I go back to a lot of the legal entanglements. Uh, you know, I have to say half my clients over the years, it's normal course of business, right? There's lawsuits constantly happening. Maybe they aren't always followed up on, or they're still going on. I've seen issues with jurisdictions around different kinds of permits, uh, the environmental things we talked earlier about, having contracts that are oral, not written,
Sure.
and if that doesn't pop up till due diligence, like in that case, that can go on forever and ever. Um, a big one in that mix can be if the contracts don't have assignability, which means that really the buyer is not able to automatically just take on that contract. May
Right.
have to get into more negotiation, may be costly. So all these things can be addressed if we start early on, right, and start cleaning them up. But that whole area, and compliance, taxes paid, the list goes on and on. But I always go back to any federal agency, any state agency that has a three-letter acronym, could be after your seller, owner, or client, and you want to make sure all that is really clean. So that's one. The other one that people don't think about that pops up, I think, is if you have business partners. So if there's more than one owner, two or three, first of all, you've got to see, and buyers will look at it, how do they get along just day to day in the business and operations? But maybe more importantly is, how are they going to function as a negotiating team, right? Let's say they're equal partners, even if they're not, right? Who are you negotiating with, right? And that can
There's
be,
usually one loudest voice, one more dominant voice among them.
yeah.
Yeah.
So in that case, my job is spending a lot of time with them, prep up front, to say, all right, let's get our act together, understand, get their consensus and agreement, around everything, a range of price, are we selling 100% of it, even a communication process throughout that. Because if they're not looking like they have their act together and are in sync, it's just messy, and a buyer doesn't want to hang around for that either. So
Hmm.
those are a couple of the things. I know we've seen a lot of others
You
that
know,
can
it,
pop
it,
up.
it, you're kind of hinting at or alluding to the fact that they basically want to go to market with a company that's optimized at all times
Yeah,
so that less is discovered in due diligence, so that the price ends up, the price that the business transacts at ends up remaining intact, or maybe even gets a premium because the buyer can't believe their eyes. They can't believe the well-run, optimized company that they're looking at, that they get a chance to bid on.
yeah, yeah,
I would think more owners would want to be in that position than responding, in a haphazard kind of way to these buyer inquiries. It already feels invasive, but if you're prepared,
mm,
if things are buttoned up and handled well, especially in the legal areas like you're talking about, oh, so much more confidence
yeah,
dealing and talking with the buyer.
yeah. No, it really is, and it would, obviously we try to get folks to start early. If we have a few years, we're helping them, like we talked about, understand
Yeah.
value and
What
all
is
of that.
what does a few look like to you? People often ask me,
Oh,
Bob, when should I introduce you? Yes, just
yeah,
let's just find out where your business owner, friend, or client is. But what are you seeing? What are you telling folks when they say, how far in advance would you like to be introduced?
Yeah, and that's an intersection with the seller owner's fear about the cost of, advisors. So,
Sure.
people, because the answer to the question is, it's yesterday, it's when you started the business, it's essentially now in terms of preparing. But the earlier you do, if you have 5 years, right, the work we do can be taken at a slower pace, but be much more effective. And
Hmm.
so the fear about fees and all of that shouldn't be as big. But there's also real reasons to start early because there's things you cannot do in the current calendar year if you're thinking about optimizing structure and the tax situation, for example. Um, but the correlation here is what I always say. Uh, People say, I don't have time for that exit planning stuff. I have to run the business. And what I say is, you've heard me say this, exit planning is simply running the business well and everything that means. So if you are doing all these things we've been talking about, right? Think critically about sales and people and staff and operations and process, and you're just running it well, you're going to make money every day along the way because you're going to be better, stronger, faster, but you're building value at the same time. There's not, you can't separate them out. And so if people have that mindset, then it's from day one on when you start. Um, you're planning or getting some of that help. And it just every year that clicks by, there's less you can do. If you've got 3 years, there's still a lot you can do. You can do some in a year, but there are some things you can't do. And if people would just think about it that way, that really focusing on optimizing your business day to day, that is exit planning to a large degree. Where we play with that is uh, we just want to have them think about that exit overlay in terms of some of the decision making, but conceptually, today start, you know, think about, all right, what's going to happen in a few years? How do I make this better? Um, you just integrate it. That's all. You integrate the decision making based on when you want to get out. Yeah.
That was fantastic. I can see my media team is probably going to pull out the past 2 minute segment that you just said. That was very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Um, I tell people in response to that question about how long, other than the joke of yes, just make the introduction. How long would you like to be introduced ahead of time? I say, a lot like you. It's a few number of years, 3 to 5 years, long enough to accomplish at least two things. One is to put some things in place, but not over such a long period of time that you're really wearing down the owner. You're really burning them out. They're tired of, as you said, paying for consultants and getting all this extra advice coming at them. The other thing it accomplishes is you've made those changes. If they're sticky enough to be provable to a future owner, i.e., the buyer, and that buyer's provider of capital, whether it's a
Mhm.
lender or a investor. So, yeah, we're definitely on the same page with that. But too often they come to us, do they not? And they say, "This is the year I'm ready to
Yeah.
sell. Let's go to market." Okay.
Yeah. I just finished one of those. Uh, and it is what it is, right? Some people shouldn't, but sometimes they wait. And sometimes there's reasons for it. But do get the help, still even in a short period of time, because it becomes even more critical because
Yep.
things are going so quickly.
There's some things you can do in
Yeah,
12, 15, 18 months for sure. Move
yeah,
it'll
yeah,
it'll move the needle.
yeah, absolutely. They can get it going. And you've seen it, and I've seen it. Just especially the last several years, is um, any business owners getting calls. Hey, do you want to sell? Do you want to sell? Do you want to sell? And too often they get excited and they have a conversation and they end up talking with just that one buyer. Not forming any competition out there among buyers, that kind of thing. And
This
those
is
are
the
some of the,
one. This
yeah,
this deal
well,
is as good as done.
yeah, and it gets short in time frame and rushed. So you've got all that happening
Oh,
when
yeah.
you're rushed. You miss things or you don't realize what they're doing and how much better a deal you could be getting, even if it's that one buyer and on and on. So yeah, that short time frame and the hey, I want to buy you and let's get this done in a month kind of thing is kind of dangerous too. Yeah.
So Uh, I've known you to be a super collaborative person over the years, and you know, forming teams and helping people stay in touch with each other. And in your philosophy, how should exit strategists and brokers and let's go further, CPAs, attorneys, wealth managers, I think you have to put in there. How should everyone work together to maximize the outcomes here?
Yeah, yeah, and I'll extend that to a whole array of types of consultants too, if we're working over a long period of time. Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, when I'm whether we just think and people kind of tend to think about the deal team, the team around you when you're just ready to sell and working that process. But whether it's that or if we're doing an extended kind of value growth consulting sort of thing, either way, you're pulling a broad team around. And my philosophy is there's no other way to do it, period. There's no other way to better serve that client because nobody can know everything. No, they really can't. And it's just a magical thing when you get, like you say, the attorney and CPA and maybe the banker, wealth, and some of the key consultants and exit and all that in a room. And there's just so much brain power there that understanding the client, what they're trying to accomplish, and then putting that brain trust around the owner is just wonderful.
Inevitably, you could have the smartest CPA in the region, in a country.
Yeah, yeah,
They're going to miss something.
yeah,
The most
yeah.
knowledgeable wealth manager about all things wealth, they're going to miss something.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not in their lane. But
Yep.
what's really fun though is when you have that group around the room, doors locked, you're talking, clients not there. That wealth manager may come up with something around marketing that the marketing person hasn't thought of, or vice versa, right? Get people with enough experience, they've seen a lot of things, and yeah, no, it's so complex, as you know, these deals and structures, and from a legal perspective, tax, I mean, business and operations and marketing, on and on and on. So I want that brain trust. I don't think there's any other way to do it. Um, and communicating, truly collaborating. So it's not just, as
Right.
I always say, the attorney talking to the CPA for 20 minutes. I mean, we bring that team around and we're all in about how do we optimize all this, once we've gotten to know the client really well, uh, and what their goals are, and then start forming it. You know, you just don't want everybody suggesting the same thing, you know, what square peg, round hole kind of thing, um, on this most important thing. And I've gone so far as to say, uh, when I do some of my speaking, I kind of say, if you to advisors, if you are not either pushing your client to make that team happen, or if you're not pushing the team to be working together in that way, you're committing malpractice, right? Because what's the
Sure.
alternative? A whole bunch of advisors giving individual advice to the owner, and they're just not going to be able to reconcile all that and make it coherent.
Themselves. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So the world's complex, and you need all that team around you. You just do.
So pinging off that complexity, there's a lot of psychology when it comes to exiting. Um, Owners in control of something, at the helm of something for 15, more often 20, 25, 30 plus years, and oh, here comes a clean break. We can see it coming. So for owners who just one day wake up, today's the day, let's go to market. I'm ready to sell. But their business is not. And I'm sure this is common in your world. Owner's ready, business is not. I'm sure you've got some go-to advice to give them to just reset expectations and planning, just help them see things fresh.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll throw in at the outset the reverse sometimes as well, where the owner's not ready and the business is,
Yeah,
right? Think so. So there is a lot of that getting into their heads, a little bit, and so many different reasons, right? It just maybe this is their thing for 30 years. It's their identity, and whether they verbalize it or not, they're like, maybe conscious, subconscious, where, okay, when I'm done, I'm done. What do I do? What do I do Monday after we close on Friday and I don't have my business card anymore, kind of thing. On the home front, which is really important too, you know, what's going on, spouse, family, is the spouse working, and then is the seller going to sell and then be sitting around the house, or the spouse isn't working and still the owner is going to be
I'm
sitting
seeing a
around the
lot
house.
more of you. This is different than I expected.
Yeah, third, we got this whole next phase of life to deal with, and it's real,
Yeah.
or just filling up their day in activity. So blanket advice is right at the outset is, what are you doing? Why are you thinking about selling? Um, and it's just kind of step back, relax, think a little bit. What are your goals? Is it time to get out? Is it a certain amount of time? Is it a certain amount of money? Uh, there's so many things, and then dive into what are you going to do afterwards, when you're done, talk with family. So first piece is just that, have a conversation, get
Yeah.
some time away, get whatever you do. If it's for you, if it's a coffee in the morning, or a beer in the afternoon, but find that time. But then with that, then talk with somebody who does exit planning, who guides folks through this. Just be open and listen and let them ask you questions. So
Because
before doing anything,
it's
yeah,
lonely at the top. I mean,
yeah.
these owners are running companies. Uh, I won't say in a complete knowledge vacuum, but employees, people who work for them probably don't have the answers. Spouse, though they've been part of this journey for a long time, probably don't have
Yeah,
all the answers. Can't go to competitors.
yeah.
Each of these advisors that we talked about a few minutes ago, have their own perspectives, and if they're not collaborative, then they might give, advice that is not applicable or advisable.
Mhm.
So, where's the owner go? I mean, they need
Yeah,
help. They need to hear
yeah,
from other folks like
yeah,
yourself.
yeah. I mean, we spend a lot of time. Sometimes it's just with that owner, sometimes with the owner and family. Sometimes there are children in the business. There's issues there. Um,
Yeah.
so it's a massive life decision, obviously, and it's can be scary, or they simply don't know where to go and they're not sure who to talk to.
Yep.
Uh, and all kinds of variations on that theme. So yeah, we just really just kind of initially truly try to push them to verbalize and literally write down in front of them so they physically are doing it. What do you want out of this? What do you want to be doing with family? What do you want to be doing? What kind of legacy for the company?
Mm.
Are your concerns? Do you want to do right by your team and staff? And that might color who that buyer profile is again. Um,
What if I could
yeah.
be so bold and say and go kind of high level? What new life purpose do you want to start
Mhm.
moving toward?
Yeah, yeah. It's, filling that day up when they might have 30 or 40 years ahead of them,
Hmm.
is pretty important. So, we hear a lot of, oh, I'll think about that later after I'm out. But that's
Yeah.
a very slow ramp up. And people don't think about, I mean, it's normal. It's human nature. Oh, I'll go play golf. I'll play with the kids. I'll join this or do that, but nothing really happens and it can be tough coming out and
It
that can stall at the last minute, stall a transaction.
that's a big hole to fill. This,
Yeah.
you know, this ownership of a business and being in control and being at that lead decision maker level, and suddenly you're
Mhm.
not. So, is there one psychological mistake that owners make you've seen repeatedly that just it costs them value and makes the process of exiting longer, take longer?
Yeah, there's a lot, but I think, at a high level, it's a lot of what we've been talking about in terms of procrastination or just putting it off. So that's one thing, right? So they're not addressing things. And then there could be, some urgency that then pops up, and that's not good to kind of rush through it. Um, but yeah, I would just say, I would say not starting out planning early. One of the components I don't think we've touched on exactly is, we talk about them getting ready and thinking about things personally and getting the business ready. Um, but early on, thinking about things where they need really to engage with their estate planning attorney and wealth advisor, tax experts, right? Those areas can be as important or more impactful as the sale price, right? Depending on
Yep.
that structure. And so, um, I guess it all falls in the category of not starting soon enough on each of
I
these
bet there's
parallel.
a I bet there's a direct relationship between the speed with which they decide to sell from let's go to market and transaction is attempted and the failure rate of those transactions actually getting done. I bet there's some correlation there.
I would guess that, and at the same time, I would suggest less than optimal deal if it does
Yep.
happen. And of course, you can't measure things necessarily when the deal gets done. And I could say it's less than optimal, and I could point to certain things where I think it could have been better. Um, you can't necessarily demonstrate that, but it's real. It really is. I had a case recently where just waiting, and then there were some serious tax structural issues that we got addressed partially, but not fully. And I
Not in
guarantee
full, right?
guarantee you hundreds of thousands at least that were lost, not necessarily with the buyer, but tax consequences, that kind of thing. And honestly, sometimes it's hard to get all that across
Yep.
to somebody in detail and those kinds of implications, but it is really real. It gets masked sometimes if they get a really big, nice check. That's great.
Mm.
They may not necessarily miss the hundreds of thousands, but it's out there, and there's probably other things as well.
I've been telling owners lately, I think I'll stick with this going forward, is your buyer, especially if they're sophisticated, private
Mhm.
equity, strategics, family offices, your buyer has spent years deciding what kind of business they want. You should just spend years deciding and building the kind of business you want to sell to match that. At the very least,
Yeah,
match it year for year.
I like that. Yeah, yeah.
Hey, let's put a positive spin on this now. You haven't, I think we've beaten up on owners enough. You have an example of where early value building dramatically changed a sale outcome.
Yeah, there's a lot, and um, some are more or less tangible, right? But I think you'll see where some of these things are real. In a recent one, it was um, the owner over several years, like we were talking about, little by little doing things. So it was a lot of improving processes, how they were doing things, training of people, in the production environment, but also in the back office kind of things, focusing on safety, which you think, oh, well, how does that impact value? Well, number one, by lack of maybe accidents.
Yeah.
So it's the absence of, but it builds a stronger team. They're feeling better. They're going to prevent future accidents, that kind of thing. Um, and then again and again, I always talk about that manufacturing scenario, but there's production in professional services, for example. So the analogy is there. How do we do things better, stronger, faster, um, getting more efficient? I won't get off into a full AI discussion, but clearly mapping out what you're doing and then looking to improve processes and then supersize it with a little bit of the AI
Yep.
on a regular basis. And so, um, in that case, I'm thinking about now they weren't getting too much into the AI yet, but they were getting the processes down much better than they ever had. Um, and then it come back to your team, and it's almost counterintuitive, but they understood first of all competition for people, and so they were paying a good hourly rate, very very good hourly rate. There was fun on site. They were engaged as a team. Um, and this is talk about so subtle, but when the buyer did their first tour, and then we came back out to sit down in the conference room and talk, the first comment was, "Wow, they were all smiling as they were working." And you think, well, so what? And no, they weren't told to smile, but for the tour. Um, they're in there and they're doing their thing and they've been doing it and they like it and it's a good environment and all those good things intangible, as opposed to if people were grumbling, and fighting. I'm thinking as a buyer, I'm going to buy these people. Oh my God.
Yep.
So those are just a few, and some are more or less subtle, but they're real. Buyers are looking at everything when you're not thinking that they're looking at things and observing and seeing.
So if you could give every owner, call it one lesson about exit planning that most people Learned too late. You wish they had picked it up sooner. What would that be?
Uh, Again, 8 hours, but I put it this way, right? It's start now, start thinking,
Yep.
start learning, start planning, kind of in that order, and don't leave out on the planning, the personal part of it, like we just talked about. Um, Integrate it day to day into what you're doing. So it's really getting that um, approach to things set, in your mind. Start early and really balance every decision that you have to make against the exit. And don't go it alone is the big one. Bring that team around. But that was several lessons, but it really boils down to start to start now, start learning now, start understanding what the process takes, start learning about what buyers look at from a value standpoint, and get help around you. And that help is, external advisors like us. It's internal. It's your family, but you know, build the community around you because it does take a village. Don't be afraid of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, as we start to wind down here, I've got a few, call them rapid takeaways, rapid fire takeaways for our audience. All
Mhm.
right. Biggest value killer that business owners underestimate.
Oh, here we go with 8 hours of things again.
Yeah.
One I know, well, one I know is near and dear to your heart as it is to mine, which is the owner's doing everything, right? And if I'm a buyer looking at this, I'm wondering what's walking out the door when the owner walks out the door. So the buyer, or sorry, the owner seller is the only one who can fix the machine on the floor. They're the only one writing checks and can
Yep.
access the bank account and on and on. So you've said it a million times. I have. We work to make the owner irrelevant. We have to explain that to them at first, what it really
Yep.
means, but that's the goal. The buyer wants this well-run machine without the owner there. Um, and then we touched on get your books and accounting to be pristine. If you have to pay for it a little bit more, pay for it. All right.
It
Crystal
is
clear.
the first place buyers go to as a screening
Yeah.
tool. I've not seen it any different. They pick up the financials first.
Yeah. I mean, and I say that to them, even in prospecting or when I start working with the client, they say, oh, should I do this or that? Some strategic decision. And I have to say, I don't know. I can't tell what's in your books. Let's get these things cleaned up so that, and the other one I was going to mention is uh, the people, right? Both like I talked about a minute ago. So the culture for people and turnover, and I'll repeat it, just because you can hire to replace somebody, if you're doing that every 6 months, something's happening, you
Yep.
know, and a buyer's going to request and require a list of all your employees when they started, and they're going to see right away, if there's a problem there. Yeah.
All right. Next question. One thing owners should stop doing immediately because it harms their ability to sell their company.
Um, well, I'll recycle one thing, which is stop doing everything.
Yeah.
That's the one thing to do is stop doing everything. But I laugh and but it is there. If they kind of just took a look at what they do every day, every hour, they just catalog it for a month and then just start handing things off. So we do a ton of that, right? One of the first things we end up doing after we've cleaned up the books and make sure we understand what's going on is look at what the owner's role is and just start pushing things, training people, bringing people up, you know.
Yep.
So I would say kind of it's in that bucket. It's letting go, right? They probably were doing everything day one and day 10 and first year, but it's not going to be sellable if everything depends on them. Yeah.
All right, let's wrap it up. If someone's thinking about exit in the next few years, this has turned out to be a very popular segment of each podcast. What's the very first thing you'd advise them to do this month?
It might be repetitive, but find an hour to disengage from everything and just start thinking about, maybe listen to what we've been talking about, start thinking about things in that context, write down what's truly important to them,
Right.
and think about therefore, all right, when do I want to get out? What price maybe? Um, and then, I guess you said this month, that's, it's a good question. It's maybe I'll say two things. It's what I just said, have that think time, and then uh, get a really good qualified CPA if you don't have one and just have them go through the last 3 years of the books and just dissect it all. If it's not perfectly clean, get it perfectly clean and understand from them why the CPA is making these changes.
Yep.
That might be a starting point.
David, this has been awesome. This has been a good one. I'm gonna watch this one again. As always, you and I have a great discussion. Where can folks get a hold of you to learn more about all the good work you do for business owners?
Yeah, they can go to the website, which is getonthevaluetrack.com. They can email me at david@getonthevaluetrack.com. Call me at 770-329-5224. Reach out any which way. Love to chat. Thanks.
Excellent. Well, folks, that's a wrap for today's episode of the Exit Teams podcast. A big thank you to my guest, David Shavzin, for sharing his insights. So if you run a small to mid-sized company, I suggest you reach out to David and see how he can help. I truly mean that. If you're a business owner thinking about your next chapter, now is the time to start building your advisory team. You can learn more in my book, Exit Teams, Build a Team of Advisors for Your Business Sale to Get a Higher Price, available on Amazon. And don't forget to visit exitteams.com for free resources, tools, and a masterclass that can help you prepare for a successful exit. Hey, until next time, build your team, sell smart, and take control of your future.